Welcome to the LDA Podcast, a series by the Learning Disabilities Association of America. Our podcast is dedicated to exploring topics of interest to educators, individuals with learning disabilities, parents, and professionals to work towards our goal of creating a more equitable world. Hi everyone, welcome to the LDA Podcast. I'm here today with Katrina Huels, the founder and CEO of Applied Harmony, an organization that collaborates with schools, districts, nonprofits, and corporate organizations to empower individuals with neuroscience-based tools to thrive in their personal and professional lives. Katrina, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you. So to start us off, would you be able to tell us about yourself and give us a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. Well, currently, I'm an author and educational consultant. But before that, I spent 23 years in education. I started out in the classroom as a special education teacher and then moved into leadership. And I ended my career in an executive director position. And what I found throughout my career, no matter what my position, is that no matter how much love or passion that you bring to the work over time, the emotional and the workload demands kind of take their toll. And that's kind of what led me to Applied Harmony and what I'm doing now.
And I'd love to dive into that a little bit more. I really love that you have these different lenses of focus, both as an educator in an administrative role as well. And you've written a lot about teacher burnout, which is something that we are hearing so much about right now. So with these lenses, I wanted to ask, how do you think about burnout? What is it? What causes it?
Well, burnout can be defined differently, but I think overall it is something chronic. It's not something that happens quickly and then goes away. It's sort of an accumulation of physical, emotional, mental exhaustion. It can be any one of those. It can be all three of those. And it really comes from exposure to what they call unrelenting stress, meaning the stress is constant and there's no time in between to sort of rejuvenate or refresh. So it's just continuous. And honestly, I think any educator will say, yep, that's what we're exposed to. And for special educators, this kind of chronic stress and burnout in general, it's really not related so much to students. A lot of people think, oh, it's a challenging job, but the students are never really what brings a special educator to burnout. It's those expectations. You're meeting multiple demands without the time, resources, and support to do it effectively, and that over time will lead to a state of burnout. And burnout really, they're precursors to it, but there are so many ways it can manifest. You can lose your passion for the work, which is that detachment feeling. You start calling in sick because you just can't do it. It's something you can't get up and do that day. Most educators, and I'm guilty of this too, we count down the days until the next calendar break. That's our strategy. It's not really a good strategy, but it's like you're grasping for anything to get you through it. And again, it's not usually the students. It's just the mounting paperwork, the demands, and it's just ongoing, So that's what sort of led me to the work I'm doing and trying to find ways. As a leader, to me, my goal was to support my staff, and I couldn't find ways to help them with the stress that leads to burnout. There weren't really any options out there other than trying to endure it or trying to stay positive. Sometimes there were some wellness trends we would integrate, but it was nothing that really created long-term sustainability.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up too, about there's different wellness trends. It's not that we aren't trying different things, and it isn't often the students' fault. It's just so many different demands, so many different hats that teachers need to wear. And in that vein, would you say that special education teachers are more susceptible to burnout, or now that a lot of general education teachers also have students with disabilities in their general education classrooms?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, honestly, I think educators in general are experiencing tremendous states of burnout. The last research, in my book, I had 2024 data, but it's risen since then. The latest data for 2025 is 52% of K through 12 teachers feel burned out, often or always. And this also applies to administrators. 40% of administrators And this was surprising to me. 40% have considered resigning, and stress is one of those reasons. Lack of support is another, but stress is definitely one of those reasons. And you sort of see this trend in social workers. I mean, the whole gamut. It's not just teachers. I think a lot of times people feel like teachers, and they do, they carry the greatest load, but this is sort of affecting everyone in the field. And in regard to special ed, to answer your question, it's really hard to get direct statistics because special education and teachers and staff are always grouped into K through 12. So it's hard to get specifics, but I think we can look at the turnover rates, the lack of retention, as an indicator that this is special ed positions are sometimes opened for a year or more, right? And I think what we're looking at with special ed is a different kind of burnout. The demands are different. I mean, they're prepping for multiple grade levels most of the time. Sometimes in high school that changes, but sometimes it doesn't. So it's not only prepping for multiple grade levels, it's also individualized instruction or specialized instruction on top of that. They're taking very detailed data on students on a regular basis. I mean, this is every day. They're running complex behavior plans a lot of the time, attending IEP meetings. It's just the role that they have, there's so many different types of tasks that are involved that absolutely, I think stress and overwhelm are part of that position, unfortunately.
And we're hearing so much about the teacher shortage and especially the special education teacher shortage. What role would you say that burnout plays in this shortage and this turnover rate?
Yeah, I think it plays a massive, massive role. Again, it's hard to get direct statistics, but there are statistics out there that show stress and burnout as one of the factors that results in all teachers, but especially special ed teachers, leaving the field entirely. Sometimes they don't just move to another position in education, they leave entirely. And this is the saddest part to me just as a special educator and an educator, I feel like when you lose your passion, you get disconnected to that internal drive that motivates you to show up. It's really hard to stay on board. It's hard to keep coming. It's hard to serve. You start feeling like you're not making much of a difference. You're depleted. So I think most of us know when we're depleted, it's really hard to give ourselves to students or colleagues or anyone really. So I think it plays a huge role in the teacher shortage. And that's why I keep asking myself, what are we doing about that? What are educators, what are administrators, what are districts, states doing about that? Because I think they all know the problem is there and they all know the effect. So that's kind of what led me to the research I started doing for the book, really.
Yeah, well, and I'd love to talk more about your book, Transformational Tools for Special Educators. I think we touched pretty well on why this topic is important, but I would love
Yes.
to talk more about the research aspect of this as well.
Yeah, well, it was hard to do because again, as a leader, you're also incredibly busy. But once I moved into consulting, I really felt like, all of my career, I could never really find ways to help teachers manage the stress that comes with the role. And it does. It doesn't matter what role that you're in education, you are going to be affected by stress and overwhelm a lot of the time. But I never found workable solutions. It's certainly not in teacher prep programs, and it wasn't in professional development or, other than those wellness trends that would come and go. And so as I started to research what can make a difference, what I found, I researched the Ruler program, which is out of Yale University. They have a Center for Emotional Intelligence Development. So I researched the Ruler program, and this is a program that brings emotional intelligence as a program building wide. So everyone's speaking the same language, developing their skills. And it's not SEL for kids. This is emotional intelligence development for adults. It has to start with the teacher. And then I noticed the CARE program. There were several different programs out there that were implementing emotional intelligence development for staff members and then looking at data from that. And what I saw, to my surprise, because my background had started out in psychology, right? So this kind of led me right back to my beginnings. And I thought, oh my goodness, job satisfaction is increasing, collaborative communication is increasing, teacher retention is also increasing. Student outcomes increase. All of these things, all of these burnout factors, stress decreases, burnout decreases. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we providing this kind of training, or at least this kind of skill development, district-wide, statewide? And that's what really got me excited as I started to research, was that, hey, there is actually a path forward here if people are open to it. But I think where they get hung up is they look at emotional intelligence development as a self-help or sort of a wellness trend, instead of looking at it as a core professional skill set that can be developed and that should be developed. I ask people all the time, would you expect a special education teacher to write an IEP without the training? And most people say, no, absolutely not, because that is difficult, right? But it's the same with the skills to manage the stress that comes with the work. Why would you just assume everyone has it? I'm not saying some individuals don't have that capacity or don't take it upon themselves to build those skills. That's awesome if they do. I'm just saying we can't assume that people have those skills. We have to really think that if they do, great. But if they don't, we need to at least give them the opportunity to develop them so that they can actually find some kind of satisfaction and sense of balance and resilience in the work that they're doing.
Absolutely. Well, would you be able to define what emotional intelligence is, and what are some of the factors that make it up, and what does it mean to develop emotional intelligence as a professional skill?
Oh gosh, it's hard to define it but I'm going to try.
Sure,
For
yeah.
the for this discussion, I would think it's the best way to define it would be to say it's the ability to recognize and regulate your emotions, and then this gives you the ability to manage your stress response and manage your feelings of overwhelm and things like that. What it does is when you develop those skills, instead of having a stress response, you can actually move into a place of clarity and balance, which is incredibly important. But it's also the ability to understand the emotions of others so that you can actually form meaningful and collaborative relationships, whether it be personal or professional. So it really runs the gamut. There are really 5 domains that I work with. There are, I will say, I kind of work with the original 5 domains, but businesses and different organizations have expanded that. But I feel for educators, many people still use the 5 domains. So you're looking at self-awareness skills, self-regulation skills, which is a really big one, motivation, and I'm speaking specifically about internal motivation there, because that internal motivation is what we were discussing earlier. It connects you to your purpose, to your why, so there's motivation, that's internal. And then once you sort of lay the foundation internally, you can move to your external skills of empathy and social skills. Very important that you have that foundation first, though, because it's really hard to engage in conflict resolution, for example, if you're not regulated. You have to be able to regulate yourself. So those are the 5 domains. And then when you develop skills in each of those domains, then when stress occurs, you don't automatically move into a stress response, or what we all know as fight or flight. We don't. We move away from those reactive responses. We go into our cognition, which sort of immediately brings down our nervous system. And then we can actually respond from a place of composure and clarity.
Something I'd want to build off of is that what did this look like in practice for educators? How can they cultivate this emotional intelligence?
Well, the skills, basically, you can cultivate it in a variety of ways, but there are lots of different techniques out there. And that's what my book has 22 tools. But with each tool comes a variety of techniques. So within each domain, because a lot of people are quite self-aware, but they might need tools for self-regulation. I mean, the first thing to do is a self-assessment, really, and decide where you are and where the development needs to happen, right? But once you come to terms with that, then you can decide which tools you want to bring in to develop those other skills, right? And when you do that, when you start to develop these skills, you'll be amazed, because neuroplasticity is one of the most amazing things, I think, in the human experience. The more you react from a state of calm and composure, the more those neural networks wire together, and that starts to become your default. So instead of just reacting, you immediately move into a state of calm so that you can think through your response. I actually developed this intuitively, I suppose, when I worked with students who had emotional behavior disorders. In the beginning, of course, I went right into fight or flight, like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do? Am I in danger? And then I realized, oh, wait a minute. And I started to develop the skills. And then when a student would start to, have an outburst or have an emotional reaction, became dysregulated, immediately I clicked into this state of calm. And people used to comment on it. They used to say, you're so calm. You just approach the student, you're calm. And I said, yes, because now I'm coming from a place where I can accurately judge whether there's a threat to myself or to the student or to anyone else. It gives you that clarity. That's the best way I can describe it. So you have to choose where you are first, and then you have to develop using tools that are out there to do that. And there are plenty of research-based tools. Certainly the ones that I include in my book are not, that is not the end of it. There are many. But I think I chose the ones that had the most research and were the most practical to use for educators throughout a busy workday, because that's important too. I think what educators don't want is one more thing to do. So, this is kind of that 5 to 10 minute tool that you can start to integrate consistently throughout the day.
Yeah, definitely. When you had mentioned earlier that one of the greatest barriers maybe to implementing this sort of work is that people will see it as another wellness trend that comes and goes.
Yes.
Would you be able to tell us how this differs from these wellness trends that we see so often and how this will have more of a long-term impact?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, because that's my biggest mission is I know a lot of the tools sound like wellness trends, but I think if people understood the neuroscience behind it, they would realize it's not. What it is skill development. Kind of what we talked about earlier. You have to develop skills in teaching, you have to develop skills in data collection, you have to develop skills in everything you do, but no one's developing the skills to manage stress, regulate your emotions, form productive relationships. These are all very, very important for your success and for your state of balance in your work and longevity too. If you're going to stay in a field 20 to 30 years, you want that to be a time where you're not dealing with chronic stress for for half of that time or more. So creating a skill, these are skills you develop. It's not something that happens sort of once in a while. It has to be consistent. So if you decide to use a tool, for instance, if you decide to use cognitive reframing, or let's say breath work, then you're going to want to make that part of your day. So let's say you're using breath work techniques, which are highly researched and highly effective at bringing you from a heightened emotional state to a place of calm. You can do that. You can say, okay, I'm going to set my timer at lunchtime. I'm going to take 5 to 7 minutes to do this breathwork technique at lunch, and then I'm going to set 5 to 7 minutes to do it at 3 o'clock, or wherever you feel that you're going to need it. And it's something you do every single day. Because we talked about neuroplasticity, you have to be consistent for those neural networks to start to shift and become stronger. So if you're only doing it once a month, you're definitely not going to reap the greatest benefits. So I guess the answer to your question is a wellness trend is usually something helpful, but not something that you're integrating as part of your way of being. I think that's my best response. This actually shifts your state of being, and that's very different than a wellness trend, which kind of helps you in the moment, but doesn't change the way you approach students, staff, and life in general.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I wanted, if I could ask too, have you seen, I know your book is out fairly recently, but just based on the work that you've done with Applied Harmony, have you seen teachers come back and what was their experience with working with these types of strategies?
Well, we don't have massive data yet, and we're just starting to sort of hopefully integrate some of this training into schools. So I don't have a lot of data to share with you yet, but I can say I'm seeing a lot of excitement around using these tools. What I have to, I think I see more excitement at the teacher level than the administrator level. And so that's why I really want districts and states to understand the research behind it. If you want to see the effectiveness of it, not just my book, but on integrating emotional intelligence, then definitely look up the research on the CARE program. They have solid research that shows what happens when you integrate this kind of work into professional development. And then the Ruler program, the data, they have one of the largest studies, and I'm trying to remember the details of that, but I'm hoping that that will be coming out soon. They ran one of the largest studies of their program, which integrates emotional intelligence into the whole building, starting with the teachers, and they're teasing out data for teachers, student outcomes, all of that. So I think we're still at the beginning stages. We already have solid data, but we're looking at larger data. I think for the Ruler study, they followed teachers over a 4-year period. So those larger studies now are starting to come out. We have quite a few. I mean, really, if you just look at emotional intelligence, the effect on educators or classrooms, you'll get enough that you can see how powerful it truly is. And I think the more we make people aware of it, the more data we can start to collect, and see what's working and what's possible by integrating this work.
Yeah. Well, and based on your experience as both an educator and an administrator, what are some systemic changes that you think would help to reduce teacher burnout?
Oh my gosh, the systemic changes to me, again, are bringing in ways like this that people can build, the teachers and staff can build skills to manage the stress. I think, teachers and staff in education, they come into the role, they're excited, they're ready to make a difference. They're so upbeat, and they have none of us had any idea of the emotional and workload demands that come with this work. They just don't know. So when you talk about systemic, I feel very strongly it should really start with teacher prep programs. I feel like, educators, administrators should come out of those programs with the skills they need. I feel like this kind of skill development should be taught in teacher prep programs first, and then reinforced through professional development, throughout the school year. That's what I truly believe. Because honestly, there's no way I mean, you do need that check. Everybody drifts into those default responses. So even if you enter in with a nice set of tools, I think districts and systems, if they can keep reminding people of the skill development piece, then I think that there's a really good chance that people can integrate it better and look at professional longevity as a real possibility.
Yeah. Well, and before I let you go, Katrina, I wanted to ask a little bit more about Applied Harmony and how people can find your work. Could you tell us a bit more about Applied Harmony?
Yes, absolutely. I provide consulting, training, and then I just actually, I'm about to publish my Transformational Tools Workbook, and that's for all educators, not just special educators. So that'll be coming out in the next week or so. But you can look at all of the work on HuelsAppliedHarmony.com. And you can also check out my Instagram account, which is cat_Huels. And also I'm on LinkedIn. So anywhere you want to explore, you should be able to get more details about Applied Harmony and what our mission is.
That's fantastic. Well, Katrina, thank you so much for talking to us today about such an important topic. We know that teacher burnout and teacher shortages are at front of mind for a lot of people, and we know how essential these administrators, these counselors, these psychologists, and educators are for our students. So I really appreciate you taking the time to dive into this with us.
Thank you so much, Lauren. This has been wonderful.
Thank you for listening to the LDA podcast, which is made possible through the support of our members and donors. To make a donation or to get valuable resources and support, visit ldaamerica.org.